Hello to you. China is hosting enormously lavish events to mark October 1st, the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. The Communist leadership has organised a huge military parade in Beijing and is hoping the big day is not overshadowed by demonstrations in Hong Kong. Let's go live now to Beijing. Our correspondent Robin Brandt is there. Robin, one thing is certain, there'll be no demonstrations in Beijing.
No, there won't. And if there are, you're not going to see them. What you can probably see now is a live shot of the events as they start at Tiananmen Square. That's in the heart of the city. It's about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from where I am talking to you from. There's smog. They wouldn't have wanted that. But that, of course, is one of the consequences of the industrial progress this country has seen over the last 7 decades since its founding in 1949, and that is the event that they are marking today. Now, I keep peeking down to my left because I can see a live feed of the pictures. There's President Xi Jinping, the leader of this country. Interestingly, the only one amongst the senior leaders wearing attire similar to Chairman Mao Zedong, the founder of modern China. You can see to his left and right other members of the Politburo, the most senior leadership here in China, including as well President Jiang Zemin. He is now 93. So this is the beginning of the parade. There's going to be about 15,000 members of the military taking part, we're told. There are going to be about 600 pieces of military equipment on display and about 160 or so aircraft flying over. Now, the military, in the run-up to today, have said they don't want this to be seen as a show of force, as China flexing its muscles. I think there might be some skepticism about that, but what is certain is China does want the world to look in. It does want the world to see this parade, and there has been immense preparation for months ahead of this. It wants the world, the United States and others, to see the military hardware it now has, stuff that's increasingly made here in China. And most of all, it wants the world to see China proudly celebrating 7 decades since the founding of the People's Republic in 1949.
Obviously, there's concern, Robin, about events in Hong Kong. Nobody wants, at least nobody there in Beijing, wants that to overshadow what's going on in Beijing.
No, I mean, Xi Jinping and the others around him wouldn't have wanted this celebration to be taking place in the context of 3 months of very serious civil unrest, civil disobedience on the streets of Hong Kong. But nonetheless, that has happened. That has continued up until last week, and perhaps it will continue this week as well, with confrontation between the police there and demonstrators on the streets. That started, as I said 3 months ago, about plans for an extradition bill, a controversial extradition bill, which would have allowed some suspects in Hong Kong to be extradited to the Chinese mainland. And many had concerns that that meant people there would be facing a very different judicial system here on the mainland. But it's now got a lot bigger. It's now got to be a protest that's centered on suffrage, on democracy, and much broader concerns about Hong Kong's future as part of China. I think the message from Xi Jinping when he speaks, and we're expecting a brief speech from him in a few minutes' time, is going to be about unity, strength in unity. There may be talk as well of an ongoing struggle. That narrative remains very important for China's Marxist leaders. Also as well, that repeated justification for the Chinese Communist Party's authoritarian dominance here in China, and that is because they say this country is vast in size, vast in number, disparate in its nature, and what it needs at its core, what it's always needed, Xi Jinping will say, is strong leadership rooted in Beijing.
Robin, stay with us, please. Let's just bring in also Natasha Kassam, who we were speaking to just a little earlier, a China expert at the Lowy Institute. Natasha, thank you for staying with us. You, of course, were a former Australian diplomat in Beijing. We were saying earlier that I think there was a speech earlier this month where the Chinese president used the Chinese word for struggle, one of the Chinese words for struggle, something like 50 times. This is a challenging time.
It absolutely is a challenging time for China, particularly as the economy is under strain and there are a range of internal and external pressures that are being placed on the CCP. Having said that, I think Chairman Xi is using the opportunity of the 70th anniversary to really engage with what I think is the strongest ideology in China, and that of popular nationalism. And so if I could paint a quick picture for you, the streets around Chang'an Avenue where that military parade is underway, they've been closed for days. People who live in neighbouring buildings have been visited and told not to watch out the windows, told to watch on TV. And if they wanted to be watching, say, the BBC, their screens would be black right now. So this is being very carefully controlled for the domestic audiences, and also the way in which it'll be received internationally, to project that power, but also to project the role that China says that it wants to play, for example, in peacekeeping, or the contributions it can make elsewhere in the world.
What would you say is behind the Communist Party's success in China?
The party's success in China, I think, is described by Chinese people in very particular terms. You'll often hear people say that we stood up under Chairman Mao, we got rich under Chairman Deng, and now we're becoming powerful under Chairman Xi. I don't think we can describe it as that kind of straight line of development, really, when you consider how many people have been persecuted and discriminated against under those policies. But certainly for many people in China who have bought into this idea of previously their humiliation, and now that they are standing up and taking their rightful place in the world, this is an important way to kind of consolidate all of those views about the way in which they should be viewed both by the Chinese party but also by the rest of the world.
Now, Natasha, we're just going to the president, who is speaking now. We have a translation, I think.
We are gathered here to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. At this moment, people of all ethnic groups in China and Chinese men and women all over the world are filled with great joy and happiness, proud of this great country, and sending good wishes to our great motherland. Here, on behalf of the CPC Central Committee, the National People's Congress, the State Council, the CPPCC, and the Central Military Commission, let me express my deepest tribute to the revolutionary heroes and martyrs for their immortal contribution to national independence, people's liberation, the building of the nation, and the well-being of the people. Let me congratulate people of all ethnic groups and patriotic Chinese all across the globe. Let me also extend my sincere gratitude to friends of all nations who have cared for and supported China's development. It was today 70 years ago that Chairman Mao stood at this very place and announced solemnly to the world the founding of the People's Republic of China, which marks the end of more than 100 years of humiliation and misery the country had suffered since modern times. The Chinese people managed to stand up on their feet and embark on a grand journey of national rejuvenation. Over 70 years, the Chinese have been united as one people, and through hard work and perseverance, we have scored unparalleled achievements. Today, a socialist China is standing in the east of the world, and there is no force that can shake the foundation of this great nation. No force can stop the Chinese people and the Chinese nation forging ahead.
Comrades, friends, forging ahead, we will remain committed to the leadership of the Communist Party of China, put people first, stay true to the socialist path with Chinese characteristics, comprehensively follow through the basic theoretics, guidelines, and strategies, meet people's aspiration for a better life, and engage in new and historic endeavors. Forging ahead, we must remain committed to the strategy of peaceful reunification and one country, two systems. We will maintain long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong and Macau, advance the peaceful development of cross-strait relations, unite the whole country, and continue to strive for the complete unification of our country. Forging ahead, we must remain committed to the path of peaceful development, uphold the open strategy of win-win cooperation, and continue to join hands with all the peoples in the world to build a community of a shared future for mankind. The People's Liberation Army of China and the People's Armed Police Force will forever retain the characters, purposes, and the nature of being the people's military. They will resolutely safeguard the sovereignty, security, and development interests of the nation and resolutely protect world peace. Comrades, friends, China yesterday is already engraved in the history of mankind. China today is created by hundreds of millions of hardworking Chinese, and China tomorrow will be even more prosperous. The party, the army, and the people of all ethnic groups must be more firmly united, remain true to our original aspiration, and keep our mission firmly in mind. We must continue to consolidate and develop this People's Republic and continue our struggle to achieve the two centenary goals and to realize the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation. Long live the Great People's Republic of China. Long live the Great Communist Party of China. And long live the great Chinese people.
Now the military review starts. On your positions.
Live there from Beijing, President Xi Jinping delivering a speech at this massive military parade to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Standing, by the way, in the same spot where on the 1st of October 1949, Chairman Mao ushered in the new communist-ruled state, declaring that the Chinese people had stood up. Our correspondent Robin Brandt is there in Beijing now. Robin, what messages are you picking up from that?
Well, let's look first at your comment there about Xi Jinping. I mean, what he was wearing, the only person among the senior leadership on the stage there wearing that attire very similar to what Chairman Mao always appeared in, standing in exactly the same place where Chairman Mao announced the formation of the People's Republic in 1949. I mean, look, you didn't have to be hugely observant, did you, to notice that Xi Jinping, a man who just 2 years ago brought about the end of term limits for the president in this country, was perhaps trying to evoke the image of the man who founded modern China 70 years ago. Look, the exhortation that came at the end of that brief speech was about the people of China. It was about the party that controlled China for 70 years. There was talk as well of unity and that word struggle, which we were discussing some 10 minutes ago before, so important for the Marxist narrative. Well, it was in there at the end, wasn't it? The struggle continues. He talked about increased prosperity. Remember, this is a country which now has the second biggest economy in the world and aspires to be richer under that ongoing communist leadership. Now we get the military parade, and today is centred on a military event. There will be civilians who take part in other events. Of course, lots of people are watching, but the centrepiece is a military event. We're going to see soldiers, we're going to see weapons, hardware, we're going to see planes, and China wants that to be the centre of the attention today. The military leadership coming into this has said they don't want it to be perceived by others, particularly the Americans, I think, as China flexing its muscles, but this is a show of force. And make no mistake, China wants the world to be looking in and seeing how capable it believes it now is.
And Robin, as people look at these pictures, we ought to I just let people know, in case they haven't reached the conclusion themselves, no foreign leaders invited, all those attending hand-picked, so no risk of demonstrators or indeed any cheering random public along the route.
No, lots of cheering, lots of clapping, but all pretty much on cue. I mean, look, this event's going to be very well attended in terms of people along the sidelines. I was down a couple of hours ago near Chang'an Avenue, which is the main thoroughfare here in Beijing, which takes you to Tiananmen Square in the centre of the city. And some people massing already, but security is very, very tight. That's almost always the way here. Thousands of people in Tiananmen Square, but they are invited guests. And you're right, there are no foreign leaders, no foreign dignitaries here. There are the cohort of foreign ambassadors. I saw the British ambassador heading down earlier. They are there. It's important they are there for protocol, if nothing else. But this is essentially for domestic consumption. This is an event where China proudly marks 7 decades of communist control of the People's Republic of China. And it's very, very heavily choreographed. Much preparation has got into this. And the main audience for this is the domestic audience, the tens, in fact, the hundreds of millions of people who will watch this now, but also watch tonight on the main evening news.
Robin, as you were saying, we are told officially this is not meant to be a military demonstration as such, but there will be a colossal amount of hardware on show. It's interesting, always interesting, of course, to analysts what China chooses to show off. There are reports the militaries like to unveil the world's longest range intercontinental nuclear missile.
Yes, a new ICBM, which we are told kind of very heavily trailed. Sounds strange, doesn't it, to be trailing the appearance of a nuclear weapon, or certainly the missile anyway, but very heavily trailed, a new ICBM which can reach further potentially into the United States and may well be a missile that can deliver a nuclear warhead that has the longest range in the world. Perhaps as well some hypersonic aviation hardware, which we have been told may appear. Peacekeeping troops as well. Yeah, that's important. Let's not just focus on the high-tech weaponry, but focus on the fact that China wants domestic audiences in the world to see Chinese peacekeepers. It believes it has a role to play in a more peaceful world, and it's more committed to the United Nations. It's also part of the narrative going forward about China's commitment to a multilateral world. At the moment, one of its biggest criticisms of, Donald Trump in particular is that the US, it believes, is pulling back from multilateralism, and China is trying to fill the gap. But for now, you can see Xi Jinping standing in the Hongqi. That is probably China's most famous car, the limousine that's carried everyone from Mao Zedong to its current leader. There you can see him, Xi Jinping. He is reviewing the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, and he will be followed by all that hardware, all that people. Just one final thing, Xi, not just the president in this country, but his most important job is as General Secretary of the Communist Party of China. Secondly, then Chairman of the Military Commission. That is essentially the role he is filling now as they all shout and cheer back at him. And thirdly, that role as president of the country.
Robin, thank you very much for that. Do stay with us if you can. I just wanted to bring in again Natasha Kassam in Sydney, China expert at the Lowy Institute and former Australian diplomat in Beijing. Natasha, it came up again there, the Chinese word, the several Chinese words for struggle, and all this at a time when the party is facing a number of challenges, isn't it? Slowing growth, the trade war with the US, the concerns about air quality, of course, the consequences of decades of growth, and the wide-scale outbreak of swine flu, and, of course, the protests and the violence in Hong Kong. We were hearing that a previously planned fireworks display has been cancelled because of the continuing protests there. The party has a lot on its plate.
That's absolutely correct. And actually, we've heard, I think, this morning that there have already been some more scuffles in Hong Kong between the police and protesters. One of the National Day celebrations has been moved indoors because of concerns about security. The Communist Party is definitely under pressure from outside and from within, the economic concerns you outlined as well. And I do think the issue of pork is one that's really significant, because often we talk about these pressures as being external, but as people are sitting down to watch this display on TV tonight, I have no doubt that some Chinese people will be complaining about the fact that in August alone, prices of pork, the most popular protein in the country, went up by 40%. And these sorts of issues are going to be at the forefront of the Chinese leadership's minds moving forward.
And as Robin was saying, we tend to assume, I know, that China is talking to us with these events, the rest of the world, but actually most of this is sending messages to the domestic audience.
That's absolutely right. This parade, as much as there are international signals involved, obviously Xi Jinping is thinking about foreign policy, thinking about the way this is perceived in the United States and elsewhere in the world. The most important audience for Chinese Communist Party messaging is the domestic one. And for that reason, there has been ongoing rollouts of displays of patriotism all week in China. You know, they're listening to patriotic songs being played over the speakers when they're on the subway. They're hearing stories about national heroes on the airwaves. This is certainly a time for bringing people together, united under this idea of patriotism and nationalism. But at the same time, you can listen to the speech that Xi just delivered, where he talks about, for example, all of the ethnic groups of China, and that must be a galling message to hear if you are connected to one of the 1 million Uyghurs that we know are being detained in Xinjiang, or other minorities who are being prevented from practicing their religion. He also said something about reunification with Taiwan, and noting that when they say that, they're talking about bringing Taiwan back into the PRC, but that's actually not true. Taiwan has never actually been a part of the People's Republic of China. It was a part of the Republic of China, which predates the 1st of October 1949. And so these messages are for, I think, primarily the people of China, the people of Hong Kong, and the people of Taiwan as well. And then of course, the international audience as well.
And I've seen in your writings, I know you describe the key behind the Communist Party's success in China, a kind of brutal pragmatism. There's more to be said about what happens in the future. We'll come back to it. I think we must leave for a moment these parades in Beijing. The 70 years anniversary of the People's Republic. The anniversary celebrations very much underway with this massive military parade. It's reported at least 100,000 people, 160 planes, hundreds more pieces of military hardware on show, expected to include supersonic drones, missiles and tanks, possibly the world's longest range intercontinental nuclear missile. Thank you very much for watching. More to come.
同志们辛苦了。